Hey, what's going on? It's not the usual vlog content that you usually see, production vlogs, but I definitely want to weigh in on the Sony ZV-E10 Mark II. Now, I've been shooting full time since 2018 in the industry, and we've primarily had Sony cameras currently. At work, we're shooting on the Sony FX6, the FX3, and the FX30. I personally have in my personal kit a Sony A7S III, and then I also have an FS7. So the ZV-E10 I thought was a pretty spectacular camera for the amount of money that you were paying. And keep this in mind, now that the Mark II is coming out, it's going to drive down the price of the Mark I. So keep that in the back of your mind because they're already selling used for like 600 bucks before the Mark II came out. And now that the Mark II is out, I'm thinking we can get this bad boy for maybe somewhere around $400 in the near future, and that'll be excellent. Maybe I'm hoping. My hopes are too high, but that would be awesome. Anyway, I'm saying all that to say this. The ZV-E10 Mark II, it's ridiculous, but it's part of what's happening with technology. Technology is always rolling forward. And so now we're getting a 10-bit 422 4K 60 camera that's coming just under $1,000, which is, I mean, $998. It's $1,000, but you couldn't get that technology unless you were talking about the Sony A7S III, FX3, and then the FX30 when that came out. I'm bringing out the Mark I's idea. I'm bringing it out as a comparison because when we use that in our workflow, it was a great camera, except for if you shot in 1080, it was garbage. But for a 4K camera, the Mark I was great for the price that it was going for. And that was right before the shortage, the chip shortage. So we ended up getting rid of ours because we bought it for what, $700 brand new, and it was during the chip shortage, so they were going for like $1,600. So yeah, we bought two of them. We let them both go at a profit with both of them. So and we ended up we switched over to full frame, everything full frame. But it was a great camera to have as a B cam. We used them as B cams. And they were absolutely perfect because at that time, all the other Sony cameras, unless you were going to pay $3,000 or more, were limited to like about 30 minutes. They had the old color science and all that stuff. All the newer cameras like the FX3, the A7S III, they didn't have the record limits, but they were like, $3,000 or more. So my thoughts on the Mark II. I think that the Mark II is going to be an excellent camera to get if you're trying to save some money and you want a B cam. I'm not so sure about an A cam, and this is why I say I'm not so sure as the camera that you want as an A cam, and this is why I'm saying it. It's going to overheat. Gerald and Dunn, take a trip over to his page if you haven't already. It overheats, and he actually wrote down a list of when it overheats and what temperature, what the climate was he inside or outside? And almost every time he was in direct sunlight, the sucker overheated after 30 minutes or so. So if you're doing any type of event coverage, if you're doing any type of live event, streaming, switching, any of that type of stuff, the camera is a no-go. If you're shooting stuff like music videos or narrative where you're going to be starting and stopping, I think then you could use this one. Using it for corporate interviews, the kind of stuff that we do on this channel, I would say probably not an A cam, simply because when you're doing corporate interviews, sometimes you can go for an hour or more. Yes, you could start and stop, but you're usually starting and stopping the roll. So it's like cut and then go again as we're asking more questions. This thing is bound to overheat. Now, I know that there is going to be something very soon that's going to be released by either Tilter or Ulanzi and other manufacturers. They're going to come out with a fan for it like they did with the ZV-E1 and some of the other cameras that don't have fans in them. So those fans help a little, but they don't nearly work like an FX3 or an FX30 fan that's just internal, that works way better. The only camera that doesn't have a fan, that does not overheat, is the A7S III, which is the camera that I personally own. So yeah, the overheating I think is going to be the big caveat to why you don't want this as an A camera, as a working professional. Now, if you're just if you're not a working professional yet, but you're like, I want to dabble into it, I want to get into it, or I want to use this for vlogging, I think it's perfect. Especially because when you're vlogging, you're doing this. You're in your bedroom, you're in an office, you're somewhere that you're indoors, climate is controlled, keeping it around 75. Then yeah, I think it's going to be a perfect camera that you can use. But if you're talking about as a working professional, I would only use it as a B cam, and I'm only using it as a B cam in certain situations because I know I can't bank on this thing to stay up and running for long periods of time. This is why at work we're using the FX3, the FX30, and the FX6. They all have built-in fans. They all work perfectly. They're all going to run and not stop until the battery dies, because it's work. We have money riding on this production, and we can't pause for an overheated camera. So overheating, it can't be an issue for working professionals. But if you're using it outside of a professional environment, I think it's great. If you're using it as a B or a C cam, I think it's worth rolling the dice. Knowing exactly what you're shooting for, though, is one thing. The other thing is, let's just say you have one camera. Let's say you have a FX3 or you have an FX30 as an A cam, just one camera, and you're looking to get a B cam. I think this is the perfect thing to get it for. And you're like, this is going to be the gimbal cam. It's going to sit on the gimbal and it's never going to get up off of that thing. Or you're going to use it handheld for B-roll only, and this is your B-roll cam. I think that would be perfect. If you only got one camera and you're like, I'm tired of, having it on sticks, and then I'm taking it off sticks and put it on a gimbal, and that takes time, especially if you're a one-man band. And if you're a one-man band, you really don't want to have to deal with that. So it's only $1,000. You already have SD cards if you have a main camera. And so it would be perfect to get a second camera for only $1,000, 4K, 60 frames, 10-bit 422. It's everything that a modern professional could need for video production. So I think that would be perfect use for that one. But if you need something more versatile that will not overheat, that's why, like I said, we have the FX30. So what we do is, we have an A and a B cam for our corporate interviews. You have the wide, you have the tight, and then we have like an FX30 or an FX3, whichever one. Sometimes what we'll do is we'll use the wide as the FX6. We'll use the FX30 as the B cam for interviews, and that's nice and tight on a side angle for the interviewee. And then the FX3 is sitting on the gimbal with whatever lens we have on it. And this way we're able to move fast, just like you've seen us in the vlogs. We're moving fast, we're running and gunning, we're going quickly. That gimbal cam is always set up on the gimbal, on the cart, ready to go. And so I think that's the perfect environment for this. But now just take, for example, my vlogs. You'll see I'm outside. And you'll see that we leave the camera outside on the gimbal ready to go. If that ZV-E10 Mark II sits outside on the gimbal ready to go, it's getting sunlight. It's getting hot. The second you turn that thing on, it's going to run for just a few minutes and then it's going to overheat. So that's a thing to consider. So for me, I definitely... Will I get one? The answer is no. I don't think I would get one. I think it's an incredible value, but will I get one? No, because of the fact that it can overheat. And we're in a day and age where we don't have to have cameras that overheat. The FX30, pound for pound is a better camera, but is it worth $1,000 more? Not really. So that's my 2 cents. I think if you're vlogging like this, then I would definitely pick one up. As you can tell, I'm making a quick at-home vlog, and I'm using it on my iPhone. I've really stuck to this philosophy of using my iPhone whenever I can for vlogs. I do believe in good camera quality, but I think, like I said, I'm a working professional right now, and sometimes you just don't want to, I take the time to light and film at work, and sometimes it's just like, I really don't want to. Or you're just working so quickly, it's like, I want to get this done right now. I want to put it out there. And as you know, the phones are getting better and better and better. So anyway, but here is what I would suggest. So me, I love budget gear. I love filmmaking on a budget. I don't believe that you have to pay in the day and age that we're at right now, you don't have to pay high dollar to get into the game and do something big. And this is completely awesome what they've dropped here in such a small package. But for me, I'm all about the dollar amount, and I'm all about professionalism, and I'm all about also, I've talked about, the show of filmmaking. And if you can give your client a nice show that you know what you're doing, I would guide you in the direction of this guy right here. And that is my FS7. Now, I still haven't made a review of it just because I just haven't had time, but that's going to be the next thing I do. But this guy right here, you can get one, you could pick one up, body, and if you find a good package, you'll find the body, you'll find the monitor, and a battery for about $900. This does 4K 60, 10-bit 422 in a higher codec than the ZV-E10 Mark II can give you. So it is a phenomenal camera for, like I said, if you could find a good one. Usually Adorama has a lot of them for around $1,000. I'd get this all day over the ZV-E10 Mark II. Now, for me, as I've shared before, I picked this guy up for $500 out of pocket. So yeah, it's a killer deal. And what it was I was watching Joel Gaberson. Shout out to Joel Gaberson. If you haven't watched any of his vlogs, go check him out, man. But I'm pretty sure you probably have. Anyway, if you found my channel, you definitely had to have found his channel. And he shoots excellent corporate interviews, and he shoots a lot of his stuff on FS5 Mark IIs or Mark 1s. I'm not sure, but they're FS5 cameras. And that's the model that's below this one. But it was still a phenomenal camera. And so just watching his content, I'm like, they are pretty phenomenal. So I went on eBay. I found one that looked horrible. Matter of fact, I'll put a picture of it. It looked like it was bad. But I was like, I'm very familiar with eBay. If it's not what the seller says it is, you could return it and get your money back. So I purchased it, and the guy just took really bad pictures. It wasn't even that bad. So I got it in, I cleaned it up. I think I added a monitor to it because it didn't come with a monitor. And I turned around and flipped it for more money. And I think I made a profit of $300 or $400. And that's why I say I got it for $500 out of pocket, because they put this guy up as an auction on eBay. But before anybody bid on it, they also had the option of best offer. So I said, why not? It never hurts to ask. And I sent an offer of $850, and they accepted it, to my surprise. And this one that I got was the fully kitted out one. It had a VCT plate, and it was a Zacuto one. I sold it, and I made a profit off that because I already had a small rig one. But it had a VCT plate. It had the monitor. It had the viewfinder, the little magnifier, EVF. It had a bunch of stuff. Didn't come with a lens, of course, but it had a bunch of memory cards. That's a big deal. And anyway, and then ended up being, after I flipped the FS5 and made that profit, I rolled that over into this one. So this one ended up being only $500 out of my pocket. Said all that to say this. This is a far better camera than the ZV-E10 Mark II. It's bigger, but that's the point. Whenever I bring something like this on the set, clients go, ooh, look at this thing. Oh, does that thing shoot movies? So anyway, that's my 2 cents on the ZV-E10 Mark II. I hope you take my opinion with a grain of salt. But as a working professional, I think that it can be better if you put your money into something else. But I still think that this thing is a great value. The fact that you get 10-bit 422 4K 60 in a small camera with an excellent sensor. The low light is great on it because it's the same sensor as the FX30. The low light is fantastic for a crop sensor camera. And don't get me wrong, I'm not all full frame or nothing. Like I said, I got the FS7, and there's nothing wrong with a Super 35 sensor. All that being said, I think it's a fantastic value for the money that you're going to be paying, but the fact that it overheats is something to consider. So that's my 2 cents, and I'll see you in the next vlog.